Hello everybody, welcome to this video where I just thought I'd check up on y'all or make a little update. Dirían en español, no, pues nada, no, nothing. No, I don't really know what I'm going to be talking about in this video. I guess just like things that I've been like thinking about or reading about as I usually would, or thinking about. Mm, I guess, well, it's April 23rd, first of all. I'm kind of like a little bit ill in the throat because it's been hot, but it's also been cold, and like the weather is all confusing. So if I usually would wear like a sweater, things like that, especially during the winter time. Um, and even right now, like, excuse me, early spring, starting in spring. But right now it has gotten kind of cold, kind of hotter. So I figure like I just wear a shirt, whatever, or no shirt, like when I'm in the house. Leave the window wide open, the fan on, whatever. But I guess that's doing bad to my body, so I gotta rethink how I'm gonna go about that. Um, yeah, like right now I just thought about the idea of rethink and how you have to think again about something before you act in a different way. Anyway, the first thing that comes to mind right now, and I'm kind of doing this by association. Well, I have a couple things that I want to talk about. Um, First of all, the movie Sinners that I watched yesterday kind of impacted me with a delayed with a delayed impact, we can say, because I watched it yesterday, thought it was weird, and then today, this morning, I just woke up and I was like, boom, like what? And I have this theory. I made this video, uploaded it with the help of ChatGPT and AI. And well, ChatGPT is AI, but anyway, this CapCut text to speech software. And the other thing is I've been reading Carl Rogers. I've been practicing listening, which in this case is like emphatic listening or listening with empathy. Um, and also the idea of like having someone listen to you. Right now, I think when I make these videos, I expect someone to listen. Um, some watch the video, some don't. I mean, but I think that doesn't. I mean, I think I'm trying to artificially recreate like a therapy session where maybe someone's listening to me, but I don't think it's the same thing because in order for that, I mean, I'm able to talk freely like I am right now, like based on association, the association of Freud, but at the same time, I'm not getting that warmth, that human connection, I guess, of another human saying, also, and mirroring back what I'm saying, like what you're saying is this. Oh, yeah, exactly. And me going like that, right? So I feel like, yeah, like it's artificially created, like it's more technological, right? And less human to just record yourself therapeutically speaking or cathartically speaking, like I do right now, and just telling you about ideas and stuff. But see, the problem I also think is that most of us, and that's exactly the reason why I wanted to practice listening, is that we don't listen. We're horrible at listening. We have the attention span of kids nowadays. Adults do too. So like I've seen it with people, like I start telling them something and they just kind of like get distracted, and the same thing happens with me. That's why, that, like, again, I'm saying it, that's why I wanted to practice listening, because I've found myself in these situations where people are telling me things and my mind just kind of goes somewhere else and I'm not paying attention, or I'm just simply not paying attention, doing something else, thinking about doing something else. And I'm like, damn, that's dangerous, because we're losing the ability to listen to each other. And if we lose the ability to listen to each other, we're losing the ability to ultimately make human connections. I was recently seeing this thing where it said that a lot of the movies that we grew up with as kids in like the late 90s, early 2000s, had to do a lot with the individual hero, with actually the outcast and unique hero. and how that unique hero was able to solve things on his or her own. And then now I think about the society that we have, in which we're all individuals, and we're just so disconnected with things. Yet we're living in very dangerous, violent, and divided times, right? So you may say, yeah, it's better to thrive as an individual. We even think on individualistic terms. Um, but that's a cold world, because it's an inhumane world ultimately, because we don't have that human warmth that I was talking about when someone actually listens to you, right? um, Phones, right? That would be an explanation for the overusage of cell phones, when people are together and everyone's on their phone, right? And how maybe back in the day, when before phones were a thing, you nowadays we look at it like that, through the lens of our modernity or whatever, and when we're able to say, yeah, like back then people were forced to talk to each other. But back then I don't think we even thought of it as like that, like we're forced to talk to each other. No, like we just did it because we were all there, right? And that was the thing to do. That's what we did, right? And for a lot of years, that's probably the only thing we did, right? Like just congregate, um, talk, tell each other stories, listen to each other, feel that warmth, connection. And nowadays, that's really hard to find. Um, that's why I kind of wanted to start like my own, not therapy counseling, but like, because I'm not a therapist, like just where I listen to people and I mirror back what they're telling me, so they could tell me like their problems, but to get that started, I mean, the person would want to have me as someone to hear them, and mirror back what they're saying. Um, and then I don't think I'm that advanced listening. I've been practicing it with like some people, but I don't think I'm that advanced to be listening to people all the time myself either, because again, I'm a product of my environment. So I think like everybody else does. Like I need my me time, I need my space, I need boundaries, right? Like I don't care about other people. Self-interest is my motto, just like it is for everybody else, right? What's in it for me mentality. um, but yeah, so I guess this space is kind of like for me to talk and rant. Just recently I went back into my playlist of I'll Do It on Monday, and I was listening to myself from 2 years ago, where I started making those videos and just talking about how I was just ranting like on a Saturday afternoon, for like about an hour, just talking about whatever. And I was like, that's pretty nice. Oh, what is that, a car alarm? And I was like, that's pretty nice. I would like to do that again, because usually when I make these videos, I haven't made these videos that often recently, but I have wanted to talk, just about whatever, because I was also seeing, and I came to the conclusion, a lot of this listening is from Carl Rogers. And Carl Rogers, he said some things that I think people interpret in different ways, but those different ways of interpretation are what becomes like popular. Like I think one of them is, like, he doesn't use these exact words, but the message that I got is basically like, sometimes you feel bad or you feel whatever, so you can talk and you can write it down, right? And when you talk about it or write it down, if someone's listening to you and like they're just, they just don't have time, they're just not patient, they're judgmental, they're just gonna blow you off. They're gonna be like, "What the hell are you talking about? You're crazy," right? But that's necessary because it's a process. Emotions are very tangled up, in humans, especially when it's difficult stuff or stuff that's been layered on for years. So it's going to be hard for people to actually know what the hell they're saying, and what they want, what they need, etc. All the things. So you need time to talk and write and just think, and think with another person. And that's where that listening comes in, listening without judgment, just like pure listening, like all you're doing is listening, and but like active listening, you're paying attention to what they're saying. You're not like, oh yeah, I'm listening to you and you're on your phone, but like, and then you paraphrase what the other person is saying, right? I think I've spoken on this topic before, but I think people, when they do that, they feel like they're able to disentangled or unentangle or whatever the word is, like they're able to detangle. They're able to know what the hell they're talking about and what the hell they're saying or thinking, right? Because up until that point, it's probably just like, I didn't even know I had those ideas in my head, or I didn't even know. It's like you go into a therapy session and maybe you're really mad at your mom, and you're like, I want to talk about my mom, and then like 5 or 10 minutes into the session, you're talking about McDonald's hamburgers, and the rest of the session you're talking about McDonald's hamburgers, and it's like you didn't even know that that's what was really troubling you, right? So that's where like free association comes in. Now I know this is not for everybody, because I think this is mostly for people, as they would say, that are intense or that talk a lot, because I like to talk, but I also like to be heard, right? And I'm saying, listening is scarce nowadays, right? It's in low quantities. Um, but anyway, so I feel like I can do it here. Um, the listening thing, I was just recently reading on that. It's in Spanish because I like to read Carl Rogers. I was gonna say Carl Jung also, but Carl Rogers in Spanish. He makes a lot of sense, and he talks about this thing about, I think this is something that is like very popular, very out there, very mainstream. People that say, yeah, you need to be congruent, to be at peace with yourself. And when you're congruent, that means that what you think, what you say, and what you do are the same things. And I actually got to that part in the book. Um, but he doesn't say it like that. He says something along those lines, and he actually uses those three methods of communication, or of action. But he says it like in a different way. And I don't know if that idea is from him or from someone else, or maybe he took it from someone else, or we took it from him, or whatever. Um, but anyway, he talks about being congruent, which is, for me, it's kind of like an old idea, but another idea which is also, which I kind of wanted to practice because I thought it was interesting and also important, and I'll get into why it's important, is honesty. Now, honesty is something that I have recently, honesty ties in with the truth. And I don't like to talk about the truth because people talk about the truth as if it were like some popular term to just throw around and say to look smart or whatever. The truth. But the truth is that, or like Truth's platform, from Donald Trump or whatever. You know, I don't like to say truth, but if I'm going to talk about the truth, then I would say, first of all, for me, it looks like this energy or force, this idea that is behind the words that I'm saying, that it's pushing the words that I'm saying, right? Like right now, I can tell you I'm getting anxious, like not, and I don't even get anxious like I used to. Like I started drinking less coffee. I only drink like half a cup, but I get like dizzy and depersonalized. Like I feel like I'm out of my body, right? And that is something I'm experiencing right now. That's the truth, right? And you could even say, well, it's your truth or whatever. The truth. I was trying to understand earlier what the truth was, because the truth, I don't know. I think about this like squimish, wormish, like kind of like orange, pinkish kind of blob. I don't know why. Um, that's like the truth. It's like I think about nasty. Like you could say the truth is nasty, the truth is ugly, or the truth is also soft. Because if it's like Carl Rogers was giving this example of this top CEO guy in group therapy, and he starts talking about like how he has no friends and he breaks down because he hasn't cried in years or something like that. And it's like that's soft. The truth is soft, and the truth is emotional. The truth has a layer of emotionality, and I think also, in some way, people don't care about the truth. And not in terms, I guess here I'm not talking about the truth like the objective or scientific truth. I guess I'm talking more in terms of like being honest about what you feel, what you see, what you perceive, being honest and truthful in your communication, more in relation to emotions, I guess. And I don't know if that's the only truth there is. I don't want to, I'm no expert. I don't want to make that claim. But it is an important truth. And I think for me, it's one of the most interesting truths that is out there, like, so it's like you try to explain yourself through these other means, and we all know about that from Carl Rogers archetypes, right? Like, I'm gonna try to be the expert now, right? Or my role here, like, what's a role that I can define myself as being in when I make these videos? Like, I'm in the role of the informative communicator, or the guy that just learned something and is going to tell you about it, or whatever, right? I would like to think of myself as telling you this enthusiastically, which for me is kind of true, because for me it makes me feel good knowing things and learning. Like it's I mean, like, I think I've said it before, it comes from the idea of like, I'm just bored, what else can I do, so I just learn. But then when I embark, or I'm on the journey of learning something and investigating it, and digging deeper into stuff and asking questions, like, I just get lost in it, and I like that ride, right? I like doing that. So I think it was Rogers who talked about your real self and your ideal self, and this aligning, which I guess in some way it's kind of like Carl Jung's idea of an individuation, and shadow work and integrating. I guess all of these like philosophies and psychologies, and psychological schools, what they try to do is ultimately try to bring your true oneness together, right? Like who you are, and not have you like separated or divided into parts. Because if you have to be like a certain way here, but then at home you have to be a different way, who are you really, and are you really happy with yourself? And I don't know if that would be the definition of happiness, then to be congruent and to be able to be who you are wherever you are. Because we could think about this: at work you're miserable, but who are you at work? You're an employee. You have to tend to people. You have to, do stuff that you don't want to do, etc. Um, so you're miserable because you can't be yourself, because you're this other person with your family, or even your friends, where you can say, that's where I really am, who I am. And then you're limited, right? But then we could say, well, as a kid, or as a teenager, or as a young adult, you need to be shaped into this societal mold, which isn't a bad thing, because if not, we would be primitive animals like little kids all the time, right? So you do need, like, if you think of yourself as being this person that's like a certain way with your friends, and you love being that way with your friends, but then at work you're forced to be this other way, and eventually you start leaving your friends behind, and you start to work more, get more responsibilities. Who you like to be, or who you are, is going to change, no? And then that crisis transition, I mean, you may fall into an identity crisis like with Erik Erikson, and then you may say, well, like, who the hell am I really, right? Which is fine, but then I think it's about reconstructing yourself, right? And then eventually figuring out again, like, who you are, what you like to do, and being that person that you like to be, like I said earlier, right? So it's like, who do I like to be? Well, I can tell you personally, one thing that I've discovered, which I think I've mentioned it, is I like to be a person, I like to teach, I like to talk about things, right? I found myself in that position, like teaching, or, having a class, teaching a class. And I like myself in that position, because I feel like when I teach, even though it's a cliche, I also feel like I learn, right? I learned things I didn't even know were in my mind. And I think it's about that. It's for me, it's about like getting things out so then I can, it's like I make this with words, and these ideas come out of my head with words, and then I'm able to like think about them and bring them back in and take them apart or think about them or whatever. um and a lot of this, things just come to my head. Like right now, I just thought about the movie I watched, and how my unconscious does a lot of work. I don't know why I get dizzy or depersonalized, but I'm still like talking. Maybe it's because I'm in the zone or in a flow state. Earlier, I was debating the movie, and I also started getting like this type of dizzy depersonalization. And even when I've given class, I felt that, right? So, anyway, I'm going to try to speak with truth, because I think that's a practice I want to implement in myself, which I already think I do. And I think that's even one of the reasons why people may find me boring when I speak, um, because the truth, especially when we're talking about other people's truth, may be nasty, maybe, for me, it's completely interesting. Like for me, it's the way that true psychologists speak, right? Like Carl Rogers, Viktor Frankl. I remember, just I'm gonna come back to the movie idea, but just to finish this other idea, which I'm speaking about, I remember when I read Viktor Frankl, and I just felt like, the man in search of meaning, or man's search of meaning. I just felt like the way that he wrote was the way that I thought about things, right? Like you're so conscious about what you're saying and about what you're feeling. You're so in tune, like Carl Rogers says. I'm able to tell you, like right now, I'm actually thinking about this, about how I'm feeling dizzy, or my ideas on this or that, and how I came to them, the origin, and, just not all, yeah, you could say it's all over the place. Maybe that's why the truth is messy too. It's not nasty. I don't want to say it's nasty because that's insulting to the truth, but it's messy. It's definitely messy, right? And the truth, I also think, is a process, right? Because you're going through that process of finding out more and more and more, right? So you try to speak with truth, right? Like if you say, I think this is what truth is, or this is what this is, and it's not really that, but you're on your way to learning more about that, and you're on your way to something bigger than that, right? But the important thing is that you're already in the process, on the road, right? So Carl Rogers, the way he writes, like right now, he was talking about how he went into this university to work, and how everybody in that university has like these bright intellectuals, and how he thought that he needed to act like that. So then, he put on the mask, the archetype, well, excuse me, of being that um, bright intellectual. And then um, he made himself aware that he was doing that, right? And then it says right here, like in Spanish, no puedo relatarles el asco que sentí de mí mismo. Like I can't imagine, or I can't tell you enough, the sickness or the disgust I felt, that I felt with myself, right? When he found out what he was doing, I wasn't myself. I was interpreting a role, right? And I think this is like something important, because we do tend to act like other people, and that acting, I mean, that's where that idea comes from. I know, fake it till you make it. Like let's say I'm very aggressive and I want to be kinder to people. Well, you have to practice that, and you have to fake it, and eventually you'll change and be kinder, right? But after some time. um, but I think I'm at a point where I've gone through the process, and now I just need to, like I already mentioned, like redefine myself and maybe look for more things like I was thinking about doing this listening thing, like I mentioned, as a job, but I don't really think that's where it's at. So maybe, like I modified it and I got the idea, which is kind of an old idea, of giving online classes. But instead of, I don't really like giving English classes. I rather give other types of classes. So right now, I just thought about this. Like I could teach, um, like what I want to teach, like psychological classes or philosophical classes or humanities, social sciences, whatever, in Spanish online, like kind of like tutoring, maybe. That's another idea I just thought about right now, right? And that's speaking with truth. That's what's on my mind. I think people don't do that, right? People are afraid to tell, and I don't want to say their truth. I'm just going to say the truth of how they feel, of what they think, because they say, well, maybe if I say this, in Mexico, that's super common. Like maybe if I say this, people are going to take it the wrong way, or I'm going to come across as this, or whatever. So they practice staying quiet and silent. So then after a long time, they're kind of like the CEO that I read about. It's really hard for them to open up because they don't open up, because they don't practice opening up. And maybe because they don't have anybody that's able to listen to them, to truly listen to them actively, without judgment, without passing judgment. Because I think that's why people go see a therapist. You can't talk to your family or your friends about your problems or what you think or feel, because they know you, and then they're going to judge you based on what they've seen you do or think or say in the past, right? So, um, and I'm not saying that your psychologist doesn't do that, because your family can even listen to you therapeutically. I think in order to do that, you're human. You're gonna make judgments, of course, in your head. If someone tells you, "Oh, I'm thinking about, turning to alcoholism because of my problems," you may think to yourself, like, that's stupid. Like that's just gonna bring in more problems, obviously. But then your job there, as either a therapist or a family member or whatever, is just to mirror that back. Oh, so you're saying you're gonna turn to alcoholism for your problems. Yeah, like I've been thinking about, but I know it's wrong. And the person will come to their own conclusions. The thing about really listening is that you can't have an objective. Your objective is simply to listen, right? That's kind of what I've learned in these last couple of days where I've done it, or these past couple of weeks. You can't tell the person things that you think they should do. You just have to guide them towards wherever they want to go. And now, where they want to go, or where they discover they want to go, maybe somewhere where you don't want them to go. I mean, you can say it, but I think it has to be very limited, right? Like you can't nag them on, you can't annoy them with constantly telling them like don't. Like I think you can just, and I would even leave that for the end, right? I mean, during the process there are probably things that you have to say or push towards, or maybe, but also like even then it's just pushing once or just saying it once, and that's it. Like they're gonna decide whatever they want to do, right? You can give them ideas, you can, plant seeds of ideas, notions here and there, different ways of looking at things, because that's part of having someone listen to you. I think is also them giving you not the solution, but like a different perspective, right? Like if I feel my life is horrible, I'm depressed, and then this person comes along and says, well, you have somewhere to live, something to eat, you have an okay job, and then you're just kind of like, well, if you honestly hadn't thought about that, and someone tells you that and makes you see those things, that's gonna help you. That's gonna be something that's gonna, like Carl Rogers says, it's gonna help you kind of like get out of. Well, I don't know if he said this, but I would imagine like this, to kind of like get out of the cave, to get out of that hole and be like, okay, I'm not that deep in, right? Of course, for some people that say, well, I've thought about that. That doesn't make me feel better, whatever. Okay, but at least someone tried to give you like a different perspective, right? Which is also important, because if you only listen, I mean, listening, I think, is also something that it's the whole process is very flexible, but listening, you can do it in the beginning, like I'm listening to this person talk, and then as soon as you have enough information, then you can state your opinion, right? Like, and not even your opinion, like I guess they say calibrated questions, guided questions, um, making people see the practical lens of things, right? The practical, um, like the practical outcomes of decisions they plan to make or things like that. I don't know. Um, but anyway, yeah, I feel like honesty, the truth, are very interesting. So when you speak, and I would like for people, maybe not always, I don't know, if I would want them to speak like that to me, but oh yeah, and I was telling you, not this is not for everybody, because maybe you read Carl Rogers, and you're listening, or you're reading him, and he's telling you, he's guiding you through his mental process. He's telling you how he thinks about things, and how he does things, and why he does them, and like, that's the truth. That's I wouldn't even say it's raw, because I think the truth also has a bad connotation. It has a bad image in some aspects, because it's like the truth is ugly. I'm very honest, and it's just people that are downright blasphemous and violent and aggressive, and it's like, yeah, I guess that's a way of being honest if that's really how you feel. But then if you're not able to keep going on that truth, it's like, I'm going to tell you you're ugly. And that's me being honest, and it's like, okay, well, why do you even think about that? Well, I just do, I just do. Like, you're just ugly. It's like, okay, yeah, like I get that first, but like I said, the truth is a process. So what's after that? Why are you thinking about physical appearances? Do you see yourself as ugly too? Is that why you judge people on attractiveness? Um, is there something else? There probably is a lot more behind that comment. There probably is a lot more behind that truth, right? So it's not just about coming out and saying one truth. Like, if you want to talk truth, then let's talk truth. Let's talk the multiplicity of truths, the truths behind that truth, right? And I think that's where people are missing the point, because it's like, people will talk about the truth. We see a lot of it in cultural or political rant. The truth is the government doesn't help you. Okay, well, first of all, what's going on in your life? Do you need help? Second of all, what's up with the government? Like, what's behind those truths, right? Or what's behind that truth, right? So I think that's an interesting route that we can go down, and that type of truth I can get behind, right? If we're gonna talk truths, and I think maybe, and see how I'm just like reaching conclusions. Maybe that's what I would like. Let's not talk about a truth or the truth. Let's talk about truths, right? And let's talk about them in a compelling, interesting, intriguing, controversial, but fun, dynamic way, right? That would be something to do. Um, but again, I think the problem here is the problem that, or what happens with everything. My butt's kind of hurting from sitting on the chair, but I don't care. I still want to talk. I think that the problem here is that people don't want to talk, because at the same time, when you talk, you got to think. And then when you think, you may have to feel things that you don't want to go there, or you're not ready to go there, right? Um, and I don't think the truth is static. So I don't think you can just say, like, I just feel this, or I think this, you're ugly, or whatever, and then it's just that, and then it just becomes circular reasoning, right? Like, well, you're just ugly because you're ugly, because you're ugly, because you're ugly. And it's like, no, like, let's go beyond that. Let's go behind that, underneath it, above it, like all around. Let's see what the hell's there really, right? Outward, inward, whatever. Um, but yeah, I think ultimately, and I think I'm a person that speaks truths, that tries to speak on truth, and especially when I'm talking about myself, I like to be honest. I've always thought of myself as a very transparent person in general. I mean, I can be not secretive, but I can be kind of like distant with some people, like like at work, or people I don't know, or people in the street. It's like, super distant, super closed off, like get the fuck off me, like get away from me, like I don't even know you. um but that's just because of precautions. If there were no dangers in the world, I think I'd just always be, talking whatever I want, whatever. um but of course, I also feel like there are people that will try to do this, and since they don't have practice doing it, they may come across as rude or things like that, because you got to take care of a lot of things. You got to take care of your speech, your words, what you're saying, the message that's coming out there, and even then it can be misinterpreted, right? Like if you say a lot, like I was seeing how, like, the most hated characters in series or movies are actually the characters that talk the most, and the most beloved or loved characters are actually the characters that talk the least, right? And that's just like a ratio of likeness to talking time, maybe. um so people don't like people that talk a lot. I don't know why. I'm not one of them. I like people that talk a lot because I like listening. I like hearing new things. As long as it's, like I said, like truths. Like I don't want you politician to be talking about vague stuff or general stuff, like, oh, we're gonna do this and we're gonna fix the system and what, like, nah, like that's just fake. That's you, you know in a role. That's you wearing a mask. That's not, those aren't truths. That's just appealing to the crowd, to the masses, to emotions, to um, manipulation, influence, whatever. But if you're talking to me about truths, then I'm there, I'm listening, And I think people don't care whether, I think people rather listen to people with masks on speaking a lot than people telling truths speaking a lot. Because it's like, shut up, like you're just saying so much things that, my head is all jumbled up, confused, and whatever. And I guess that does have to do maybe with capacities. I don't know, I don't want to sound arrogant, but it's just different types of temperaments, right? Or habits. For me, it's habits. It's what you do with your life, right? So it's also maybe how you're born and programmed. Like I'm more nervous. That's why I get anxiety, right? So I'm just a person that likes to do this, that likes talking, that likes thinking about things. Um, to the point where I need to look for ways of maybe sometimes escaping that and relaxing, and not thinking about anything. Like I meditate, I journal, and even then, like I'm thinking or journaling or meditating about things that I have to do or things that I want to, think or talk about. Um, but yeah, anyway, like right now we're already at 38, almost 40 minutes. So what I want to talk about to just kind of wrap this up is the movie Sinners 2025, directed by Ryan Coolidge, something like that. So I watched it yesterday, and I made a video talking about what I thought of it. Which I actually, this is what happened. Yesterday I watched it at the theater, at the movies. Um, and at times I got kind of bored because I'm like, this is so fucking long. Like I thought it was supposed to be over, because I saw that it said 1 hour and 37 or 137 minutes. So I thought it was like an hour and 37 minutes. And I was like, oh, good. Like that's how long a movie should be. Like no more than an hour 40, an hour 45, right? But then I read it wrong because it said 137 minutes, which is like 2 hours and 17 minutes. So I was like, oh, so like when the movie was supposed to be done with, I looked at my watch because it's a little, like, there's a little glow in the dark thing, and I saw the long hand, or what do they call it, the long part, and it was supposed to be almost over, but it just kept going and kept going, and I was just like, oh crap. So that was my biggest problem, but that's my biggest problem with all movies nowadays. Like they're just too long. Like, anyway, the movie, I didn't expect much of it. I heard that it was really good, but that was it. I think I saw a trailer for it when I went to go see another movie a while ago, but I didn't really remember it. And then when I was watching it, I was just like, you know, like it was kind of loud. I think that was like the theater's fault. but I didn't really think much of it. I was just like, this is just kind of weird. I was like, it's just weird. Like, what? And, I don't want to repeat the same thing that everybody's saying about the movie because you can just go anywhere and see what everybody's saying. But for me, that was like the one word that stuck with that I can tell you it's my truth, it's my original truth. Not copying anybody else. It was just weird. Like, I was just like, that's just weird. Like, and then the ending happened and then like I kind of wanted to cry, right, because of this idea with the music and the best day, the worst day that Sam had. If you watch the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, I can just say at the end I wanted to cry. And I think some people in the theater were actually crying because I would hear the noses like being sucked up, right? And I held back the tears, right? But I did want to cry, and that was it. And then today I woke up and like that's happened before, like with sleeping is like this crazy thing. Like I have dreams. I made like a video of a dream I had, una noche de reflexión, o la última noche de reflexión, I think in Spanish. That was a dream I had. And like I woke up and I was just like, I get it. I get what the movie was about, right? And I was telling my girl about this, and I wanted to cry. I made the video on it too on for YouTube. It's called Ghosts of Fame or something like that. Um, and I started to analyze it from that perspective, like, and the way that I see the movie, everything basically makes sense because like I said, I thought it was weird when I saw it, and there were a lot of things that you could say like, what the hell was that, what was that about, that doesn't make sense, a lot of like inconsistencies, loopholes, things like that. But the way that I see it now, I think it's not a masterpiece, but I think would make sense. So if you watch the movie, or if you already watched the movie, I'll tell you where, for me, it starts to get crazy. And it's exactly in the part where it gets crazy. I mean, the movie has been divided into two parts, basically. The first part is like an epic, no, they call it an epic piece, history piece, crime. It's about these two brothers that come back from working with Al Capone in Chicago. It's the 1930s. They're in Mississippi, segregation, all this stuff. And they're trying to get like a party going, right? So they're going around. It's like kind of like adventure time in that first part. It reminded me of like back in the day with the homies and just going from point A to point B to point C to point D, and just chilling, gathering people up, whatever. Let's meeting new people, experiences, things like that. So like in the first part, it's very engaging because if you're really into that type of narrative structure where it's like we're meeting new people, the dialogues are engaging. There's like crime stuff going on. It's fun to watch. It's funny at times because it's so like what, like there's this scene where like he pays a little girl to watch his truck, and he makes the little girl negotiate. Like he teaches the little girl how to negotiate, and it's funny. Um, so yeah, that first part is you could say it's real, right? It's realistic. It's like you would think that it's going to be like a historic piece, like dated in the 1930s, things like that. Um, and that part is normal. We could say that's like the normal part. But then let me tell you the point where I think, and maybe I'm wrong. I would have to rewatch it again. But from what I remember, the part where things get crazy is when Sam is this kid that wants to play guitar. He wants to play musical instruments. He wants to sing, and his father is kind of making him be like a preacher, like stay with the church, and like kind of like limiting him in some way. Um, and they say there's a lot of coming of age stories nowadays. Like they already said the new Shrek is also going to be like the typical Shrek's the father that wants his daughter to be doing something, and the daughter's going to rebel against him. And at the end, Shrek's going to understand that, you can be your own person, whatever. Anyway, there's a part where, like the cousins, they gather up, all of the things, all of the people they need, and then the party starts. When the party starts, everything is still like all good. There's a scene with what we now know are vampires, right? That are getting chased by some Indians. And but anyway, that may have us doubt, like if that happened in, for me, okay, this, and it may get like weird or controversial. For me, the part where Sam is playing in the party, and then you start to see all of these people from the past and the future and the present, like musical genres or how music evolves through time, because like that part gets very, how can I say, like mystical, like it gets mysterious, it gets very symbolic, very weird. From that part on, everything that happens after that, I want to say it's in Sam's imagination. I want to say it happens, if not at a conscious level, at least at a subconscious level, it happens in his head. And what the movie is actually about is about Sam leaving his town in search for fame and, like they said, for his purpose, right? He wants to be, um, I don't know if famous. He never really expresses that, I think, but he wants to play. He doesn't want to be with his father in the church preaching. He wants music. He wants to get out there into the world, adventure time, like his cousin shows him or his cousins show him in the beginning of the movie. And he actually makes that decision on screen. He tells his cousin, he gets in a fight with his cousin because of that. He tells him, I'm leaving. His cousin's like, where are you leaving? And he's like, I don't know, I'm just leaving, like I'm heading out there with my guitar, I'm gonna do what I love. And then the whole second part will throw you off guard because it's like the vampire supernatural stuff where it's just like vampires, where I could get down into explaining things on that too, why symbolically they represent different things and things like that. Even the brothers, there's a whole analysis you can do on the brothers, which is played by the same person, which I think that was done on purpose too. The duality. Ryan, the director, he's a Gemini, so he was talking in an interview how there were twins, in his whole life, like growing up, there were like sets of twins everywhere he went. And he was a Gemini, so I don't know if that's something that Geminis experience, like they get to meet a lot of twins or they see a lot of twins. I don't know. I've never really seen or met twins, I think. Anyway, so I think it's the movie's about that. It's about him like basically leaving his hometown, and then the deaths that you see on screen with the vampires and all of that fighting doesn't really happen. It's just a metaphor. It's representing symbolically what it means to leave your town, right? Because the director Ryan, he even talked about that in an interview. He said that it was his story. It was a personal story, and he would talk about his uncle, how his uncle was this guy that was in World War II, and he liked to listen to the blues and drink. I think it was whiskey. And how when he was making, because he made the Creed movies and the Wakanda movies, he was very busy, you know, and because he was after what he loved to do, he missed like funerals, like his uncle's funeral and things like that. So for me, that makes sense. Like it's like the people don't die, but they die to you in a way, or you're a ghost to them or something like that, because you're not with them anymore, because you're doing your work, because you're traveling, you're out there, right? So it's like this battle between community, right? What I was talking about earlier in the video, like having, see, there's pros and cons to both types of lives. If you say, I'm going to stay in my community, I'm going to have the warmth of people, the love of the people I love, I want to share, I want to have strong bonds, I want to feel, all that love and empathy, and help me through the struggles, and my emotions need to be, stable, and I want to have like a peaceful life. you know, that's when people may say, I'm not the richest guy, but I am rich in love, or I'm very grateful, I'm very fortunate to have my family love me, things like that, right? um, there's that, right? But then you could also say, well, you know, I'm not happy here because I'm not living what I really want to be doing. You know, my heart aches for something else. I need to be somewhere else, doing something else, right? This thing that I love, this passion that I have, this talent, right? Um, and and you can do that. You can stay like that, but then you may grow resentful, you know, or spiteful, and become one of those people that say, oh, I could have done this, but you know, there were people, there were obstacles, or you know, I didn't think I could, or whatever. um, and then you may think about, well, what happens if when you go out there? Well, when you go out there, you get to live your passion. You get to experience life at its fullest, right? That's what the YOLO mentality. You only live once. Go out there, travel the world, get to know people, get in trouble, like experience everything there is to experience, right? Live life with no regrets, right? Because the people that maybe leave their town in search of fame, fortune, their passion, and actually achieve that type of lifestyle, maybe the type of people that have nothing to regret, right? Because they always say that, you know, you're an old man on your deathbed, you know, are you going to regret this, blah blah blah. And those people may say, I have nothing to regret, which I doubt, but that's like a very romantic modern idea. And then the people that stay back, you know, and they just live their life out peacefully with their family, kids, community, with all the love and everything, um, are supposed to be those type of people. I don't know. That may say, yeah, like you know, I have all these regrets because I didn't do this or that in my life. I should have taken more chances. I should have risked more, whatever. It's a good, you know, that's for me what happens. I know a lot of people may want to say that the vampire scenes actually do happen. For me, I don't think they happen because of the ending. Because he gets to, you know, Sam gets to be an old man, and then the very end of the at the very end of the movie, there's another post credit scene where you can see Sam playing in the church, and for me, that's the next day. Some people may say that's the day before the party, but for me, it's the day after the party. And he doesn't have blood, he doesn't have the scratches, he's just playing peacefully. Because for me, what happened is he went to the party, he played, he got convinced that that's what he wanted to do because of the people, because of his cousins, because of everything. Nobody got killed at the party. And then he just leaves, you know, and then he goes to church the next day, like he promises that he would, because he's a man of honor, he's a man of his word. And then after the service, what I think is that you can see him playing, right? And some people may say, well, how come he sees the vampires when he's an old person? And I'm like, well, that's just something that he had in his unconscious, in his mind, in his imagination. I mean, call it whatever you want. But for me, the whole vampire thing is super symbolic. And super symbolic stuff happens there too. You know, like just this idea that, you know, the music industry or the entertainment industry is like a blood sucking vampire. When the demon starts, like, or the one of the vampire the demon one of the vampires starts, like, you know, almost like baptizing Sam, right? He doesn't attack Sam. Yeah, just for me, that's all symbolic. Some people may argue and say, no, that actually happens. For me, it doesn't make sense that it happens, right? It makes more sense that it didn't happen. And it was kind of like those movies like in Twilight where everything just happened. You know, I think the only thing we're missing here is like a scene where like the camera goes into the eye or out of the eye of Sam, right? Where we're able to see explicitly that it happens in his head. But I mean, if you have that, everything else makes sense, except for the part of the vampire originally, where he's being chased by the Indians. So in that part, you may say, well, was that in Sam's eye too, or what, right? And maybe, you know, I only watched it once. Maybe I would have to see it again, and maybe I would find other things. But for me, that's what it was. right? So yeah, anyway, we're already at like 55 minutes. I'll finish up this video. Hope you guys enjoyed my rant on all these topics, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace.